Star Wars. Also known as Episode 4, also known as A New Hope, also known as Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope, also known as The Adventures of Luke Skywalker. Star Wars blasted into existence in 1977 and instantly became a blockbuster hit amongst audiences and critics alike. I've been fortunate enough to have grown up with the franchise, and it is by far my favourite film saga of all time. A relatable story about a young farm boy named Luke Skywalker who dreams of adventure and one day has that dream come true through a lucky twist of events in his life back home. And this film's a U. Suitable for all ages. For starters, one of the many things Star Wars gets right is the characters. They're so simplistic yet so likeable. I mean, Han Solo, played by the great Harrison Ford, is a selfish smuggler who seems to care about nothing else other than his ship and his money, and yet he is my all-time favourite character. He's just so cool and charismatic, and he's so interesting to see evolve in nature through the course of this film and the trilogy as a whole. If I could be any other person, fictional or not, it'd be Han Solo. Well, as long as that also grant me access to his blaster, his ship, and the Star Wars universe itself, but still. Many argue that Luke just comes across as a whiny kid. But come on, who wouldn't be if you were stuck on a boring sand planet all your life, constantly being told that you had to wait around longer and longer all of the time? Never getting to join your power-converted friend Biggs in the academy. Film-wise, we have the threatening Darth Vader. Easily one of cinema's most beloved and iconic characters ever created. I do not think there is much more to say other than that James Earl Jones has one of the darkest and yet greatest voices of all time. I mean, just listen to what it could have been without him.
Start tearing this ship apart piece by piece until you find those tapes. Find the passengers of this vessel. I want them alive!
It's a highly detailed and creative universe with diverse creatures and gadgets. What makes the film work so well alongside this is through the simplistic nature in terms of narrative. It's a classic good versus evil story, but with a ton of minor meanings along the way, such as friendship, hope, and mass genocide. The fact that it is so simple is what allows for this film, and the original trilogy as a whole, to work so well. Anybody of any age or gender can follow and relate to it. It's a great example of pure escapism, never becoming too complicated and boring, but instead just simple enough for audiences to fall into the world being created on screen as they follow the journey of a young farm boy as he too explores the universe with them. That's one thing though. Isn't this Luke's first time visiting anywhere that isn't sand orientated? I mean, it's assumed that he's grown up and lived on Tatooine all his life, and as far as we're aware, Tatooine is a desert planet, made up entirely of desert. When he turns up on Yavin 4, he doesn't seem at all too surprised by the complete contrast in tone to what he's been living with all his life. Sure, he's probably seen holographic footage of places like this or whatever, but I don't know. They could have at least shown us a scene or two of him just adjusting to all this change. I mean, he does a pretty decent job of attacking the Death Star too. So does that mean he also has experience flying in space? So then he must have left the surface of Tatooine before, but they never stated that. And my favourite scene in the entire film includes Luke though. It's the Binary Sunset scene. It's such a beautifully shot part, and the score here, named Binary Sunset, is literally breathtaking. So much so that I've been sad enough to listen to it sometimes at night to help me sleep. It perfectly captures the imagery of this young man with high hopes and dreams of someday reaching for the stars and the many planets out there. Practical effects play a large part in setting up the worlds here too, and the majority of them, if not all, are great. I mean, to this day, I still think the practical model of the Millennium Falcon looks 100 times superior to that of any CGI today. I'm not getting into a rant about CGI use today. I mean, I agree to the extent that combining both methods together works totally fine. CGI can help improve on those little bits that need touching up on a practical model, for example. See Moon. But the fact that something on the scale of the Death Star was a real-life model really adds to the overall intensity and horrific presence presented on screen thanks to it. The effects department really did an excellent job here. The sci-fi weaponry with the iconic lightsabers is just an amazing addition too. Those things make Star Wars work just as much as the plot and characters do in my eyes. Okay, maybe I take that back, but what I meant was that together they all make up Star Wars and need each other in order to do so. The sound design helps make things like the lightsabers work to the extent they do as well. Thanks to this, we have the glorious Millennium Falcon, the terrifying TIE fighters, and the blasters all come to life in the way they do. Some of the best sound design around in my opinion, at least some of the most inspiring. Linking on to sound, we have the return of our favourite composer from the Superman review, John Williams, given arguably his greatest selection of scores ever, and again a choice that may have easily derailed the Star Wars film itself if it hadn't had Williams giving the film that iconic and empowering score it couldn't work without. For example, I doubt that Binary Sunset scene would have had anywhere near as much impact without his talent composed over it. Outside of the technical aspects, I find the film to be highly entertaining. It does admittedly have a slow pace throughout the establishing first act, but once we are introduced to newer characters such as Han and Chewbacca, you really begin to feel that sense of adventure growing, and from there on, it is non-stop enjoyment. Reaching the Death Star and having to rescue Princess Leia is the section of the film I find the most enjoyable. It's a part where you realise that these are fairly ordinary people faced with the task of a rescue mission aboard a gigantic space station. It really is a film that succeeds in escapism. Star Wars is one of the greatest things ever. Ever. It has even had so much of an effect for some that it is actually part of their lives. It goes for me. I actually don't think I'd be 100% the same person I am without it. And we all have the legendary George Lucas to thank for it. Yes, he may get a lot of backlash for most things post Howard the Duck, but even so, the man is largely responsible for Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and even Red Tails. I mean, how can you not like him for that? I think I'm going to wrap up my review here, as I don't want to get too long, and this being Star Wars, that could easily happen. Anyway, my overall rating for Star Wars Episode 4 A New Hope is 9.1 out of 10. But yeah, Star Wars is an absolute classic and a film that I doubt will ever die down in popularity. It's a film that not only defines a childhood, but a life. I'm never going to stop loving Star Wars. It's like not loving film itself. And of course I look forward to The Force Awakens coming out at the end of this year more than life. More than life.